Good morning, everybody. My name is Sophia Hartkopf. I am Program Manager for the Multifamily Upgrade Program with PG&E, and we're going to get started now. It's about 4 after 8. And welcome to today's webinar on becoming a partner in the Multifamily Upgrade Program, either as a rater or contractor or both. Again, my name is Sophia Hartkopf, and I'm the manager of this program. I work for TRC Energy Services, and we implement this program on behalf of Pacific Gas and Electric Company. A few logistics just to get started. If you are this is the first time you're using GoToWebinar, there's a couple ways you can engage in the webinar today. I'm more than willing to take questions throughout. We have a small group, so please type your questions in the question box, and I will address them as I can, probably between sections. I'm the only person running the webinar today, so bear with me as I take your questions as they come in. And you can also see who else is on the webinar today in case you're curious who else is taking part. And make sure that you have your audio set up, so you can either set up your audio through your phone or through your computer directly. And there's the audio settings on the GoToWebinar pane that you can adjust accordingly. I'm actually going to be recording this webinar today, so you will be able to access this webinar on our website after it's completed, and I will also send you a copy of the presentation for your reference. So jumping right into the content, we launched the Multifamily Upgrade Program in November of last year, 2014. It's an extension of PG&E's pilot program that they offered in 2013 for a small group of projects. And there are some slight changes that I'll discuss today, and then also get into much more detail about how you as a rater, contractor, or both can get actively involved in the program, and what we need from you in order to list you on the program website as a participating rater or contractor. So first I'm going to go over the program itself, then I'll cover the participation of a partner from the perspective of a partner. I'll go over in very brief detail the assessment and modeling requirements of the program, job submission process and combustion safety, some ongoing training and mentoring we offer through the program at no cost to you, and a little bit more information and contacts for who to speak to moving forward regarding specific technical questions. I have to start every presentation this way. These are publicly funded programs, and as always, we have limited funding, and it's always subject to change and termination, although that's certainly never our intention. It's funded through the California utility customers and administered by Pacific Gas and Electric Company under the auspices of the California Public Utilities Commission. And I also need to advise you that attendance of this webinar does not guarantee that you'll participate in the program, nor will it guarantee that you'll be able to work on a participating project. This is a market-based program, and so it is up to you to bring work to the program or to respond to bids coming from owners that are submitting directly to the program. And as such, it's not our role at TRC to have any interaction with you or the owner regarding your contracts to help you execute them. We keep a very clear arm's length apart from those interactions. That's really between you and the owner. We're here to help you specifically on technical questions, help you understand how to participate, provide you with some feedback regarding the scopes of work you might be looking at for multifamily properties, and certainly help you with interactions with the owner and bringing everyone together to complete a successful project, but we stay out of the contractual issues. So a little bit about the program. It's a partner network-driven program, meaning you as contractors and raters play an active role in bringing projects in and responding to projects that come directly to us. It's available to all PG&E customers, both gas and electric, service. So if you have properties that you're working with that are located within a municipal utility territory, for example, Sacramento Municipal Utility District has an active program, we'd be happy to work with you to ensure that you can get incentives through both PG&E and SMUD, or depending on the other utility, through other municipal utilities as well. The most important requirement in terms of entry for the program is 10% energy savings above existing conditions. So we measure 10% savings based on an energy modeling process using energy modeling software, and it's above existing conditions. So that existing condition baseline will be determined based on a comprehensive audit that you perform at the property to identify what's at the property today. The goal of the program is 2,500 dwelling units retrofitted between now and the end of this year. And PG&E does have a continued interest in funding this program next year in 2016. However, none of those budgets have been identified at the moment, so we can't guarantee the program will continue, although PG&E certainly intends to make that possible as much as they can. It's still very much under discussion. In terms of timelines, as I mentioned, we started in November of 2014, and we've already received quite a few projects over the last few months. And we're continuing to take projects in today with the expectation that audits will be performed, if not already having started, in a lot of cases on projects that submitted earlier in the year, no later than the end of Q4 of 2015. We do need to allow time for projects to complete construction, and depending on the comprehensiveness of the scope, that could be a multiple-month process or even more than a year. So some of the projects that are much larger and have large scopes have already gotten in touch with us and are already working with contractors and or in the process of bidding their projects out to contractors to do work over a multiple-month period. A little bit about eligibility of properties. So if you're working with a multifamily property, obviously it needs to be within PG&E territory. If you're working with properties outside of PG&E territory, there are other programs, and we'd be happy to help direct you to those programs. Most of the major utilities in California now offer comprehensive multifamily programs like this. We consider a multifamily property 5 or more units in a building, although I will say that on a case-by-case basis, PG&E has been accepting duplex, triplex, quadplexes if there are multiple duplexes or triplexes or quadplexes located on a single site. So get in touch with us if you have a project that might be somewhere in between this definition, and we'd be happy to help you determine whether it's a better fit for the multifamily program or PG&E's single-family program. This is an existing property program, so this needs to be existing multifamily property. If you are working on a new construction project, PG&E also has a new construction program we'd be happy to direct you to. We consider or will take any type of multifamily property as far as affordable versus market rate versus mixed income. There's no affordability requirements in this program. We also take many different building types. So we've seen properties with as many as 10 stories and as few as a single story small garden-style apartment complexes. So there's a wide range. If you have any questions about eligibility of a property type that may not fall into one of these categories, as I mentioned, please get in touch with us and we'd be happy to help you further. I already mentioned the 10% improvement. We measure that improvement based on site energy. That's something that you can determine from the energy model, and it's produced automatically in the energy modeling process. So you'll be able to tell once you've modeled your building whether it qualifies at 10% or if it's coming in at a greater percent improvement. We do require that you install 2 or more measures in 2 unique categories. And we have 4 categories that we've identified for purposes of this program. That is building envelope, heating and cooling, water heating, and appliances and lighting. So for example, appliances and lighting on their own, even if you're doing an appliance upgrade and a lighting upgrade, would not qualify for this program. PG&E does have incentives for what they consider single measure upgrades, such as lighting, which we'd be happy to direct you to as well. And those incentives They have a whole measure catalog that's available that you can reference. We also require that the rater that's performing the assessment and the contractor performing the installation work, or multiple contractors, are qualified through the program. And when we say qualified, what we mean is that you submit an agreement to adhere to the program procedures, that you hold the appropriate certifications, which we will be screening and asking for you to submit as part of the process, and that you perform the required activities as in support of the program related to performing the audit, installation work. Generally speaking, the rater is more actively involved with us, as they're the ones doing the most work as it relates to determining the scope of work, doing the energy assessment, providing all the documentation that we review in order to reserve an incentive for a project. The contractor can be more involved. We certainly encourage it, but generally speaking, we'll be expecting to spend most of the time up front just making sure the contractors have the appropriate licenses, insurance, and certifications to perform the work, and then it'll be up to the rater on the back end to verify that the work was installed according to the specifications. This is what everyone wants to hear. So as far as the incentive structure, the way it works, the incentive starts at $600 a unit. It increases at every % improvement. So if you're bringing a project in at 20%, you're going to see a much higher incentive per unit than a project coming in at 10%. And it does increase at a higher rate after 25% improvement. So we are trying to encourage projects to go deeper and show much deeper scopes and deeper savings. As I mentioned, this % improvement is determined using energy modeling, and the incentive is paid at the back end. So this is really important to know. For a project that you're working with that does not have significant operating capital to do improvements, they will need to seek outside financing to make this possible. Generally speaking, the incentives pay a small portion of the total cost of the upgrades. So if you're working with a customer or a participant that is seeking additional help, we may be able to help direct them to other sources of financing that are available. There are programs in the state available to multifamily housing, as well as tax credits that can help put together a package to make a project like this feasible. We also pay an incentive for the assessment and verification services that are typically paid to the rater. It is set up to be paid to the owner. However, the owner can sign off to pay either the rater incentive or the upgrade incentive to the rater performing the assessment and the contractor performing the installation work. And that's actually part of the application. It's a checkbox that they check when they fill out the application to indicate that they would like that incentive to go to the rater or contractor or both. The incentive is $100 per unit, and it is capped out at 250 units. And we do provide a bonus incentive. So for projects that are going deep, we provide a bonus incentive of $25 a unit, which would mean that the total assessment incentive would be $125 a unit. So it's not something that you can plan for to automatically receive. Obviously, it does depend on the scope of work. But the intention of that bonus incentive of $25 is to encourage you as a rater to actively play a role in helping the owner to determine a scope, and when possible, encourage the owner to take on a deeper scope. So we want to reward you if you're successful at bringing projects to deeper scopes. So I'm going to go over the process. In terms of qualifying for the program so that you can be listed on the website as a participating rater or contractor, we require that you attend this orientation, which you're doing right now. We also will be screening you to make sure that you meet all of the license, certification, and insurance requirements that the program has set up. And we also ask that you review and sign and obviously abide by the terms and conditions of the program that are outlined in the agreement, which is a separate document to the application. As far as qualifications, we tried to provide a wide range of certifications that we would accept in order to qualify participating raters and contractors. The intent is to ensure that you have sufficient training in order to perform this work and have enough knowledge of multifamily buildings to be successful in this program. We require at least one of the following certifications in each area. So there's 3 areas outlined here. And the intent of splitting it up like this is that we do anticipate that some consultants or raters will put together teams of folks, or maybe a single company will have multiple individuals that have different certifications performing different tasks. So for energy modeling and any utility data analysis that you do, which is optional, we require that you have a rater certification, either through California Whole House Rating System, through CalCerts, or through ResNet, or that you're a certified energy analyst through the California Association of Building Energy Consultants. For assessment, recommendation, and verification, so that's the actual field work, we also require that you either have the California Whole House Rater or ResNet Rater certification, or you could bring in someone who's got a BPI Building Analyst certification or a Greenpoint Rater Existing Home Multifamily certification. So over the years, there have been a lot of trainings provided that provide sufficient understanding of how to perform a multifamily assessment, and these are some of the most prominent ones that we list here. If there's another training program that you recently have gone through, please let us know. We may be able to accommodate you on a case-by-case basis, but these are the requirements that we've set forward. And then for combustion appliance safety, which I'll be discussing in more detail later in this presentation, we require that the individual that's performing the combustion appliance safety testing at site or on site have a BPI Building Analyst or Envelope Professional certification. So the combustion safety requirements are very heavily modeled after the Building Performance Institute combustion safety protocols, and so it's very important that the individual performing this work have that certification and understand what those protocols are. And then additionally, for high-rise, we've split that out. So for low-rise projects, we see an easier transition from, for example, a single-family program to a multifamily program. For high-rise, we find that often there are very complicated systems in these buildings that require additional understanding and knowledge in order to properly support those types of projects. So we do require that if you're going to do a high-rise project that you have previous experience working in a multifamily program similar to this one. So we'd ask that you provide that, that experience to us when you're submitting your documentation. And then for the assessment and combustion safety requirements, we ask that you hold the BPI Multifamily Building Analyst certification. Contractor qualifications. So contractors are the ones doing the installation work. Really the key here is that PG&E wants to ensure that the actual installation work that's being performed is being performed by a contractor that holds the appropriate licenses for the work that they're doing. So we do expect that some projects will have a general, and in that case a or B license would be sufficient. In other circumstances, it may be a set of multiple contractors performing individual measure installations, and in that case we just ask that the contractors hold the appropriate certification for, or excuse me, the appropriate license for the installation work that they're performing. And if you are a general contractor and you're the primary contractor listed on the application, we will ask that you appropriately oversee your subs if you're hiring subs to ensure that they are appropriately licensed, certified, and insured for the work that they're doing, and that you're willing to accept responsibility to ensure that that's the case. It's not going to be our responsibility to manage each of your subs and make sure that they are abiding by the program requirements. A little more detail about contractor qualifications. So if you're not a general and you're just performing an individual measure, and in that case there are some additional requirements related to the types of certifications, or excuse me, licenses that the program requires, all based on CSLB requirements for various installation work. Insurance requirements. So the program does require that you hold a certain level of insurance for this work, and it differs whether you're a rater or a contractor. For there's 5 key areas. We've got general liability insurance that's required, business automobile liability, workers' compensation, professional liability and errors and omissions, and just you do need to require those certifications or these certificates. You need to submit these certificates to the program within a reasonable time frame in order for us to continue to list you on the program participating partner list. So I said 5, I meant 4. So there's 4 major requirements for insurance. They're listed here. It looks like the professional liability and errors and omissions is not required, but is recommended as a best practice for you to hold that type of insurance. And we have had some questions about workers' comp that have come up in previous presentations. There are some circumstances where if you're a sole proprietor that this may differ. So if you have questions about that, get in touch with us and we will provide you with guidance on that. Partner background checks. So looks like I typed a word here that's not fully complete. Self-certification is what I meant to say here. In the past, the program required that you submit a specific background check form. The background check requirements are now integrated into the program agreement. And it really it's to ensure that that you and your staff are, adhering to a certain level of professionalism when you're visiting a site. So there's some information in there about drug use, alcohol, criminal record, and just ensuring that the folks that you're working with that are going onto these sites are, professional, not posing any danger to the tenants. So I'm going to take a pause here for a moment and see if there are any questions. So there was a question that came in about CAS testing. BPI single family, or must it be a MFBA? So for CAS, let me go back to that slide. If you're doing a low-rise property, and I should clarify that a low-rise is 3 stories or less, and a high-rise is 4 stories or greater, the BPI building analyst is sufficient. But if you're performing CAS testing on a high-rise building, which has typically much more, or more commonly large central systems, complicated central systems, then we require the MFBA. I had another question come in about BPI regarding projects that are 100% electric. If you're not performing combustion safety testing at the site, you do not need to have a BA at the site. So in order to be listed on the program website, we would ask that you team up with an individual that does have that certification so that we can at least list you as being able to serve projects that are not all electric. But for purposes of a project that is all electric, if you're not performing combustion safety testing because there's no gas at the site, then we would not require that that individual performing the assessment have that certification. I had another question come in about fuel switching. So fuel switching, believe it or not, has been quite a complicated issue for the utilities, and it's something that has not reached any kind of resolution with the Public Utilities Commission. It's been something that's been in discussion, heated discussion, for quite a while now. I would just say that continue to raise it, bring it to our attention. We will continue to bring it to PG&E's attention, who will continue to have the discussion with the Public Utilities Commission. But at this point, we cannot accept projects, or excuse me, we cannot allow projects to claim savings from fuel switching. And I would encourage you, Michael, to get in touch with us offline, and we can discuss further how we might be able to work with a project that is doing fuel switching in order to still allow you to participate. We just we certainly cannot claim savings on projects that have undergone fuel switching. So I'm going to move on, and I'll take questions after the next section. So at a high level, this is the program process. If you've participated in a program such as the Energy Upgrade California program for multifamily in other IOU territories or investor-owned utility territories, the process is going to be very similar. I'd say the biggest distinction that I've noticed is that we do require that projects undergo some form of pre-qualification through us in order to proceed. And the reason we do that is we do not want you to move forward with a project that we don't think has sufficient opportunity or that we don't think has sufficient funding available. So we want to try to make sure you're successful at the work you're doing. So we ask that you spend a few minutes with us at the beginning talking through your project so that we can, one, get you into our pipeline and keep track of your project, but also ensure that there's sufficient savings, and also have a discussion with you about where the funding is coming from to perform the work. After you've pre-qualified, we ask that you submit an application with the building owner and rater and contractor identified. Then the rater performs the assessment, collects all the documentation about the existing conditions, builds the energy model, submits all of that to us for a desktop review. We review the assessment documentation, ensure that everything looks good, that the savings estimates are reasonable, and at that point we issue what's called a notice to proceed letter and reserve the incentive, at which point construction can begin. I should mention that we can't issue a notice to proceed until we've completed combustion safety testing. So if any issues are identified at the site, the property owner needs to prepare to mitigate those issues prior to us committing or putting in an incentive reservation. And then after construction is completed, the rater goes back out to the site again for a second or a third visit to verify that what was specified in the notice to proceed as far as the scope of work is installed. And if there's HERS testing that's being included as part of the scope of work for code compliance purposes or for the program, they would be performing equipment testing in addition to doing a visual inspection. And then once we get the final documentation back from the rater, outlining any changes to the scope of work that happened between the notice to proceed and construction completion, then we do a final review and we issue a request for incentive payment to PG&E. So these next slides go into this process I just outlined in a little more detail. I'm not going to read everything off this slide, but I'll just go over one more time just briefly the process. So for pre-qualification, we're collecting some very basic information about the project, and it's a conference call that we set up between you and the owner just to understand what the project's current conditions are to the best of your knowledge, any planned work that's being done, what your time frame is, and what your funding situation looks like. In the application stage, we ask that the owner and the rater and the contractor all sign the application in order for us to proceed with performing the assessment review. And in some cases, I do foresee that the application may not come in until the assessment is underway, although that it is our preference that the assessment not begin until the application is submitted. And importantly, during the assessment process, there's combustion safety requirements that we ask that you uphold. And then once the assessment is completed, like I mentioned, we'll review the documentation. And once we've gone back and forth with you a few times to verify that everything is documented properly and that the savings estimates are well thought through, then we will issue a notice to proceed and reserve the incentive. Construction, installation, pretty simple. Verification, the rater will go back out, like I mentioned, and verify the scope of work. And as I mentioned, once all the verification documents are submitted and we approve everything, then we will issue a request to PG&E to pay the incentive. So I do need to mention that we cannot consider a project officially enrolled in the program or incentives reserved until we have done the following 4 steps. So partner readers and contractors must be qualified and have submitted their insurance certification and other required documents to the program. We need to have a fully filled out application, including signatures from both the rater and the contractor. We need to have a full assessment package, and that assessment package includes the takeoffs from the site visits, photographs, a report, the energy models, and any other documentation that we ask for to help us understand and feel confident in the existing conditions and proposed upgrades that you're specifying as part of the scope of work. And lastly, until we've really completed the review, even if you've submitted an application and all of the associated documents, we don't consider a project reserved until we have completed the review and spoken with you about the final scope of work and issued that notice to proceed. So assessment requirements at a high level. So this is very similar to some of the requirements that have been outlined over the years through the Home Energy Retrofit Coordinating Committee for multifamily. But we have detailed requirements written out in the program handbook, which I will be sure to share with you after this presentation. And then the most important thing I wanted to point out here is that this particular program does require that you produce a report, a detailed report, and include some basic information about the project, documentation of the existing conditions in photographic form, description of recommendations for upgrades, including those that may not be currently feasible because of budget reasons. So providing the owner with a real understanding of what the total opportunities are at their property, even if some of them have longer paybacks and are not currently something that can be financed through the current budgets. I will mention that the program does certainly encourage utility analysis, but we do not require it. So if you're able to access utility bills, then we would certainly encourage it. And anytime that you can calibrate the model to actual utility data, you're going to have a lot more confidence in the results. Modeling requirements. So we're using Energy Pro version 5. Energy Pro has since released a version 6, but for the purposes of this program, we're asking that you use version 5. For low-rise, you'll be using the residential performance module. For high-rise, you'll be using the non-residential performance module. So low-rise buildings refer to residential codes. High-rise buildings refer to a combination of residential and non-residential codes, and so you'll be using the non-residential performance module. For the 10% improvement, we are able to include non-tenant apartment areas. So, for example, common areas, stairs, lobbies, corridors. And on a case-by-case basis, we can also include areas that are not inside the units, not inside those common areas. So if you have a pool or a large parking structure, outdoor lighting that needs improvements, we will work with you to incorporate as many of those end uses as possible. So the intent is that we're really looking at this at a property level and understanding all the types of energy improvements that can be done to the property, not only inside the units and some of the tenant common areas, but also in some of the greater common spaces or outdoor spaces. We will accept site calculations on a case-by-case basis, but if it's not something that can be modeled in Energy Pro, but I will caution you that these will need to be vetted by PG&E, and that process can be lengthy. So if it's something that you're interested in or something that you really don't think you can properly model, talk with us, and we will certainly try to help you, but I don't want to give you false hope that it's something that we're going to be able to accommodate, since PG&E typically has to get direct approval from the Public Utilities Commission, and that's a lengthy process. So a little bit more about combustion safety. I'm going to pause for a minute and take some more questions if anyone has them. I did see one come in. Can a contractor be the rater as well? Yes, we do allow contractors to also perform the assessment work, but we do ask that if you are a contractor that is doing the installation work and also performing the assessment on the front end, that the owner hire a separate third-party rater to perform the verification. So we do want the verification to be separate from the contractor's installation work. Because essentially the role of the rater on the back end is to verify that the scope of work was done according to specifications and perform any compliance code or program testing, which it's in the best interest for that to remain separate from the contractor. Feel free to type in other questions, and I'll take them after this section. So a little bit more about combustion safety. At test-in, when you're putting together your scopes, your bid with the property owner, you'll want to understand what the property conditions are and what types of systems are installed in the units, because that will determine how much combustion testing you have to perform at the front end. So we do require that 100% of common area be tested. So if you've got gas appliances in common areas, you do need to test those. 100% of central combustion equipment, so any kind of central water heating systems or other gas systems that are serving potentially the tenant spaces and the common spaces from a central room, those all need to be tested. And then all tenant units with planned upgrades of combustion equipment or pressure dynamic changes need to be tested. We do allow sampling if no pressure dynamics upgrades are planned. So in other words, a pressure dynamics change is any kind of change that will impact how air flows in the unit, which could impact whether there's issues with combustion when you, for example, tighten the space. And that's, to give you some examples of the types of upgrades that could result in pressure dynamic changes, include fans, vents, window upgrades, and any kind of envelope upgrades, so insulation in the attic, in the walls, in the floors. At test out, we do require 100% test out for all units and all common area equipment. So in the test-in stage, if you have gas appliances in the unit or you're planning to do upgrades that will affect the building envelope, the fans, or the vents, you will have to do 100% sampling on the front end as well. But in some instances, you will be doing sampling on the front end and 100% test out. And I want to mention that, I think that's actually on the next slide. So I'll wait a minute. So exclusions. If the combustion equipment is located completely outside of the building envelope, you don't need to include that as part of your combustion testing. And if you, at the back end, at test out, if you have, if you're installing new ovens and ranges that are gas that do have obviously a combustion impact, we don't require that you test those new systems. So PG&E has what they call a gas service representative. They have multiple gas service representatives whose job it is to respond to combustion issues at homes and properties. And the process that we're trying out now with the program is that as part of the assessment, when you're performing the assessment work and you have a date scheduled or multiple dates scheduled to perform a site visit, we ask that you get in touch with us and let us know so that we can engage a gas service representative. PG&E has gas service representatives from that are performing the work in different regions of the state. And in some cases, they can be made available so that they really can just show up at the site when you're doing the audit, so that you don't need to call in problems, but you can address the problems as they arise during the assessment or verification and solve them right there, then and there, if possible, or at least get some action taken that would, put the tenants out of danger of any combustion risk. So the program requirements very, for the most part, reference BPI. However, PG&E does have specific appliance thresholds that they've put together for combustion leakage, and if they exceed any of these values, then it's immediately something that needs to be addressed by the gas service representative and by you as the rater. So it's really beneficial to have the gas service representative there during the audit, because it will make the process much quicker and more efficient for you, rather than having to stop all work potentially and wait until a gas service representative can arrive to the site. This is a detailed table that I'm not going to go over today, but as I mentioned, I'll provide this as part of the follow-up. And we have a whole chapter on combustion safety in the program handbook, which has a much more detailed description of what needs to be done. And we're also here to help you understand the requirements of the program. So you can follow up with us one-on-one after this conversation if you need more information. Any questions about combustion safety? Okay. So a little bit more about the program training and mentoring. So we did some trainings last fall that if you haven't listened to yet, we would certainly encourage you to listen to them. We did a short training on assessment requirements and best practices for doing data collection, documenting the existing conditions, how to sample, and the required testing for the program. And we also did a short webinar on energy modeling protocols. And I will also mention that the next iteration of the program handbook for partners will include a whole chapter on energy modeling with guidelines for your reference, which we hope will be beneficial and useful. And that will be a living chapter. We will be making revisions to those as we uncover certain systems or certain modeling best practices that we want to communicate to you. So in 2015, we recently did a BPI Multifamily Building Analyst certification. If you missed that training and you know of someone or you yourself would like to get that certification, I would suggest that you get in touch with us, and we'll put you on a hold list. Unfortunately, we do not have budget to offer another one in the near future, but if we do have budget towards the end of the year, we probably will repeat that training if we have sufficient interest. And then we also did a training recently, which there's a recording for, which I will also provide you as part of the follow-up to this particular presentation on Title 24, Part 6. So there are instances where you will be triggering code, and not surprisingly, if you're working on a project that's triggering code, we require that you meet the code or exceed it. So you do need to be familiar with what the code requirements are and understand when they're triggered and when they apply. And then we're doing a diagnostic testing training for combustion appliance safety testing, actually a little bit later this month, as soon as next week or the week after. And if you're interested in attending that training, it's going to be at the Stockton Energy Center. Send us an email. I'll have our contact information at the end of this presentation, and I'll make sure that we get you a registration link for that training as well. So continuing education. Once you've submitted the documentation for the program, insurance, your certifications, the agreement, we will ask that you complete a certain level of continuing education to remain on the list. And this is just to ensure that the raters and contractors that are listed on our list are actively participating in our program. We do not have continuing education requirements for contractors. However, we certainly encourage you to remain engaged as much as you can. All of these trainings are open to you, and they're free of charge. But for raters, we ask that you complete 4 hours a quarter of continuing education. We would like to see 3 of those hours come from the program. So the 2 trainings that I mentioned earlier that we gave last year on energy modeling and the assessment, those would count towards your first quarter of continuing education. So it doesn't always have to be an in-person training attendance. We will, on a case-by-case basis, for example, the case I just mentioned, allow you to view a previous training recording. Any other questions? Okay. We're almost to the end. I just want to mention some of the resources I've been talking about today. The partner handbook is something you'll want to reference on a regular basis. We will be regularly updating this handbook, and we'll let you know when an updated version has been released. But the handbook includes information about the program process, assessment protocols, energy modeling guidelines, combustion safety protocols. So the intent is to house all of our major policies and procedures in one place for you to access when it comes to the program. And certainly if there's areas that are not clearly outlined in the handbook that require clarification, please let us know, because as I mentioned, this is a document we will be consistently updating throughout the program. And secondly, the partner portal. So once you've submitted all of the documents I've been referencing today regarding your certification and your insurance, you will get access to what we call the partner portal. It's a portal that's only accessible to participating raters and contractors. And it's where we will keep partner resources, including the handbooks, upcoming trainings, previous training recordings, and it's also a place where we will ask for you to start submitting your documentation electronically. So in the past, we've accepted the assessment documentation by email just as attachments or using Dropbox or other sources for file transfer. In the future, we will be asking that you upload your documentation directly to the partner portal. And this just gives you an idea of what it's going to look like. It's a web page. You'll have your own login with your own password that we will provide to you once you've completed the program requirements and to qualify yourself as a participating contractor or rater. So next steps. If you're interested in being listed on the page of participating raters and contractors, please email us at multifamilyupgrade@trcsolutions.com. Send us copies of your certifications, your insurance documents, and we will follow up with the partner agreements once they're available. They're still undergoing review at PG&E, but once they're available, we will ask that you sign that document. That'll be your last step in order to be listed. And then, as I mentioned, continuing education, I would highly recommend that you review the assessment and modeling training recordings, and get engaged on future trainings as they are relevant and interesting to you. And also, feel free to let us know if there's topics that you feel you would really benefit from a specific technical training. So we do have budget to provide mentoring and training to participating raters and contractors, and as part of that process, we can develop some customized trainings, budget permitting, depending on what your needs are. So please be in touch with us if you have recommendations on topics that you would like us to go into more detail on. So that's it. This is important information about the program contacts. I would recommend that you always start with an email to multifamilyupgrade@trcsolutions.com. That's our general program email. It's checked on a regular basis. And we have a traffic person who will get your email to the right person depending on the type of question you have. You can always contact me. My name, again, is Sophia Hartkopf. My colleague, Mike Maroney, is our technical manager. He's unable to be here today, but if you have technical questions, certainly get in touch with him, and he will direct you to the answer and the resources that you need. And the program website is multifamilyupgrade.com. Go ahead and access that at any point. We've got some basic information about the program up there. But as I mentioned, most of the technical documentation and trainings are going to be on the partner portal. So once you've completed the first steps of submitting documentation, you'll have access to more resources. And you can always reach us over the phone. We have a toll-free number, which is listed here as well. All right. That's all I have today. Does anyone else have questions? Okay. Well, in that case, look at that. We will end 5 minutes to 9. I hope everyone has a good morning, and please give us a call if you have any questions, or shoot us an email at multifamilyupgrade@trcsolutions.com. Thank you very much.